Good afternoon and welcome to the QEM Heroes webinar series. I'm Christine Wood and I serve as the Assistant Program Director for the Heroes Fellows program at QEM. For more than 30 years, QEM has been a national catalyst for STEM education transformation and research capacity building. Currently, the QEM network serves nearly 900 colleges and universities and reaches more than 8,000 individuals nationwide. This webinar is part of the HEROES initiative. The HEROES program brings together researchers with experience in the federal government to lend their expertise and support to the STEM research and education communities. Our fellows are here to provide tools and tips for navigating the funding landscape, developing STEM programs and partnerships, and improving talent retention in in-demand fields. We hope this series promotes engagement with our HEROES fellows and provides valuable resources to our participants. As always, the webinar recordings and slides will be available in the QEM Resource Hub. By attending this webinar, you will soon be added to the QEM network and granted access to the Resource Hub. And I am very happy to introduce our Heroes Fellows today. Dr. Chris Atchison is a former program director in the Division of Equity for Excellence in STEM within the Directorate for STEM Education at the U.S. National Science Foundation. Chris's research focuses on inclusive science education and designing and implementing accessible field learning and research experiences to support students with disabilities in geoscience academic programs. Dr. Yulia Goreva is a geochemist by training with a PhD from Caltech, specializing in earth and planetary sciences. She previously served as a scientist at the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History and as a scientist and technologist at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And Dr. Carrie Hall holds PhDs in biology and STEM education. She has over 15 years of experience in writing, directing, and mentoring grant efforts at the national level. Her passion is helping early career faculty define and grow their research agendas and realize their talents as researchers, teachers, mentors, and lifelong learners, the full definition of a scholar. Her QEM territories are Oklahoma and Arkansas, and as a proud Tulsan, she is excited to be working in her home communities. So without further ado, I will turn the floor over to our presenters today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine. That's great. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Let me open my slide here, or my slide PowerPoint. Okay. Okay. Are you seeing the right view?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. So thanks, everybody, for joining. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. Engaging undergraduates and community college students in research was one of the most rewarding points of my career when I was in the academy. And I know a lot of people find that it is rewarding for themselves as faculty, and it's honestly life-changing for the students. So we want to today present to you the importance of undergraduate research, and then we're going to go through some case study models that each of us have used in our own academic careers that involve undergraduates in research through particular models that may work in different contexts at your institutions. So a lot of times, we don't have the resources or the lab space or the time to do full-blown laboratory experiences for students. And so curricular approaches can really engage a lot of students and have some high impact on your research agenda and on publications and presentations nationally, either through a course-based undergraduate research experience or what's known as a cure, or through independent study. These are models that really can engage a lot of students and be the scientific engagement they're hoping for in what can otherwise be a didactic curriculum. Mentorship and faculty models are also quite impactful for students. If it's one-on-one mentorship, or if it's within the context of a lab group or a summer research project, faculty-led models can involve one to as many students as you can fund through best practice, and getting those students those opportunities to actually see the science they're learning about in the classroom, actually see it in practice and engage in that process themselves. Formal programs and external opportunities, things like REUs, community projects, partnerships with government organizations or nonprofit organizations, or other professional laboratories. And then also there are some good examples of community college specific strategies that hopefully those of you in the audience who either are at community colleges or are partnering with community colleges might find as ways to involve those students in your research programs. Then we're going to talk about the importance of why involving undergraduates in research helps broaden participation and introduces equity into the scientific process, which is also, especially for those of us from the federal space, is particularly important and is one of our legislative mandates for broadening participation in STEM. We'll also talk about showcasing and recognition, both for the students and the faculty, but for the students themselves, and also a little bit of a different perspective on that. And then finally, we have a good summary chart of some funding opportunities that you might be able to engage in to find funding for your students. And so, Yulia, talk to us a little bit about the importance of undergraduate research.
Thank you, Carrie. So before we get into specific strategies and case studies, I want to spend a minute on why this matters. Because framing, how you frame undergraduate research at your institution shapes whether faculty buys in, whether administrators fund it, and whether actually students show up. So the short version is undergraduate research is, as Carrie already said, is one of the most studied high-impact practices in higher education. It was actually named an American Association of Colleges and Universities regional framework of high-impact practices. And the evidence since then only deepened. What the research consistently shows is that how students learn changes, who persists changes, and where they go next changes as well. So the 4 boxes on this slide basically saying the same thing, but from different angles. I'll quickly walk through them. The first is deeper learning. Of course, everybody knows that when students do real research, they stop being consumers of pre-digested knowledge and they start being producers. They have to design experiments. They have to sit with uncertainty. They deal with results that don't match predictions. They have to defend their interpretations. So the highest levels of Bloom's taxonomy, which is analysis, evaluation, and creation, these aren't things that you can really teach with a problem set. They show up when students actually do the work. So career readiness is what people often go to first. And yes, it is real, but it's much broader than technical skills. Yes, students learn to pipette or code or run a regression, but they also learn to communicate uncertainty. They learn how to work in a team that doesn't always agree or never agrees. They learn how to recover from failed experiments. They learn how to communicate their findings in writing and verbally for an audience that doesn't already know the answer, as their professor who's grading their homework is. So these are all very durable skills, and these are the skills that employers actually ask for. For students heading to graduate and professional programs, undergraduate research is functionally a prerequisite at this point. Strong recommendation letters from faculty who actually know students' work and work ethics as well. Conference presentations, ideally publication or two. These are not the bonus points anymore. They are how students get into competitive PhD programs in many fields. And we should be honest about this with our students. They need publications. Even if it's a second last author on a paper, they need publications when they're still undergraduates if they want to move on to graduate school. Finally, equity and belonging. And this is, Carrie already made it or emphasized that, but this is where the evidence is most striking of the importance of undergraduate research. Because the students who benefit the most from this early research are often the ones who get the least access to it. So first generation students from groups that historically and currently underrepresented in their disciplines, Undergraduate research is one of the strongest interventions we have for retention and STEM persistence. So yes, mechanism again is partly about skills, but to a huge part, if not the main part, is it's about belonging. It's about the student in a research program being treated as a junior colleague by a faculty mentor and starting to see themselves as someone who does science, not just someone who learns how to do it. So that's the foundation. Those four bullets are foundation. Everything else in this webinar, the strategies, the curricular approaches, mentorship and formal programs, community college strategies, showcasing, this is all in service of building this experience for more students. So, Carrie, let's go into how and see some specific case studies.
All right. Thanks, Yulia. So like I said, I can go on and on about this. It was life-changing for me. It's life-changing for my students. My first faculty position was at a small liberal arts college that had a 4-week January study abroad term. And so it allowed me to extend some of my research that I'd done during my PhD and my postdoc into my own classrooms with my undergraduates at the liberal arts school. And so I was able to take it varied between 14 and 16 students with me. I ran this course for 4 years to New Zealand, and my research was focused on communication, animal communication, and movement patterns and so forth. And so I was able to partner with one other instructor, and we were able to take students abroad for this 4-week research experience. So our research topics were very much focused on my research questions. And here what you see, these are New Zealand giant weta. It's an ancient orthopteran if you're familiar with crickets and katydids and grasshoppers. And these Dinocritta rugosa are about the size of my palm. So these are big insects, very big insects. And so one of the main research projects was that you can see right here on this one. This is a radiotelemetry tracker. And so then this is me down here with the equipment to track these insects. And so one of them was about the nocturnal movement patterns and their mating behavior. And so students were able to go out and use the radiotelemetry equipment, track these insects at night. It was a fantastic project, crashing around in the bush in New Zealand for 4 weeks. And then bringing them into the lab. This is in the laboratory at my field station. And what we were looking at was their vibrational communication. And my students, we didn't know how these animals communicated other than chemically. And so my students were some of the first to discover that they actually send vibrations through their legs, through the substrate, and there's a language that goes on between the male and the female when they're courting. And so my students have published papers about this, and we know now that these ancient orthopterans communicate through substrate-borne vibration. So that was very rewarding. So yes, the research was great. The learning objectives of the course were aligned with the scientific process, and they had to produce a final project and a presentation. And we had multiple student-authored publications and national presentations from these projects. And most importantly, what this allowed me to do, because it was course-based, it allowed me to recruit students who might not otherwise have a research experience. Oftentimes students from underrepresented groups have family obligations and jobs and don't have the socioeconomic status to allow them to be on campus all day, every day, when they have to go to work or whatever it might be. So what this experience allows is during class time, they're able to have their research experience. And so throughout this course, sort of 120 students got to participate, and many of them wouldn't have had the experience otherwise. Some of them, it was their first time flying anywhere, and I was taking them all the way to New Zealand, so it was quite exciting. So yeah, that was probably one of my favorite examples of course-based undergraduate research. I had a couple others, but this was one that was really kind of a highlight for me and so many others. So one other model also is faculty-led summer field research experience or lab experience. Perhaps many people in this audience, their research season may be necessarily restricted to the summer because of course loads during the academic year. So that was the case for me when I was also at the liberal arts college, and then I extended that when I moved to an R1. where I had a long-standing research project at a nature conservancy site here in Oklahoma. And I had collaborations with the Osage Nation, a couple other tribal governments, the Nature Conservancy, and oil and natural gas industry. And there were multiple ecological and ecosystem sustainability research projects that I had students working on for 10 years. And they would, some students would come back with me for a second summer. And so they would have particular research projects that during the academic year, they would have independent study with me to set up their research projects, do their experimental design. And then once we're in the field in the summer, those teams of students would work on their field collections and sampling and so forth when we were in the field. One of the nice things about this particular model for me was I was able to involve students from a multiple disciplines, not just biology students. I had students from art classes that would take their non-majors biology course with me and become interested in what I was presenting. I had a couple psychology students, some athletic training, lots of education majors, multiple STEM disciplines, chemists, biochemists, geologists, especially from students from the arts and humanities, I had some publications that had some wonderful artwork that my students produced for publications. And it was just such a benefit for everybody in the experience. And they also benefited from each other's expertise from their own disciplinary perspective. So when you're thinking of developing your own research experience for students, if possible, think about bringing in students from other disciplines too, because it really is, as we say, as you bring in more diverse voices and perspectives, it really adds to the research projects themselves. All of my summer field research experiences, the students were paid a summer stipend, their field station expenses and travel expenses were all covered. And then also, just like the New Zealand projects, these led to multiple student author publications and presentations. And it was incredibly rewarding. It really does make everything they learn in class come alive when they can engage in a research experience. I know for myself, in fact, as an undergraduate, by the time I was a junior, I was bored with classes. I didn't know kind of what the point was. And it wasn't until I got my first research experience during the spring of my junior year that it all kind of came together for me. It's like, oh, this is what I'm interested in. This is what I want to do as a career. I want to be a scientist. This is what I want to do. And oftentimes for students, that's when things start clicking for them as well. And so the more you can involve students in research, the better in whatever modality. And I'm going to take it over to Chris now so he can explain some other case study examples he's participated in.
Thanks, Carrie. I don't have any fancy student drawn pictures to show you all, but excellent work. I do want to talk to you about a few examples, and a lot of these examples kind of build on each other. In a couple of slides, I'm also going to talk about research experiences for undergraduates, or REUs. This top paper, and I give you these as examples to look into if you are new to the idea of integrating your undergraduates into research, to check out some of these papers, or reach out to any one of us. Obviously, we'd be happy to talk to you about ideas or anything else. So this top one was actually an REU that my colleague Tim Hawthorne and I created in Belize. And it looks at community geography research experiences in the study abroad program. But the idea here is that we took undergraduate students to Belize and collaborated with Belizean undergraduate students at the same time. So we were doing research, community geography and physical geography research in Belize, collaborating collaborating internationally. So the idea here was that students were being thrown into the community setting. They were working with community to collect data, working with their Belizean counterparts to interpret the data, and then working together on, just like Carrie was talking about, presentations, publications. We even were giving presentations at a local library where children from the community were coming in, and we were working with them specifically, sharing our outcomes with them and getting even younger students interested and involved in this. The second one was a paper written over multiple projects, and these outcomes it started off with research that was done. All three of these projects, both the last two papers here that you see here, were specific to creating accessibility in field sciences. So the first one, the first case study was focused on getting students, undergraduate students, into the field to learn, not only learn, but to conduct research studies. So the very first one specifically was a study that was done at Mammoth Cave National Park in eastern Kentucky, and all the students were had physical disabilities. They were all power wheelchair users, and they were all taken into the cave, and they all participated in a cave mapping project in there. And so whereas Carrie was talking about integrating this type of work into an existing course, there was no existing course for this. So we created a specific course for these students. None of them were geology majors. And so we had to integrate a lot of we did crash courses of geoscience content to get them prepared for this activity. So not only were they there to conduct the research of this cave mapping exercise, we were also looking at the accessibility. Whereas Carrie and Yulia both described the sense of belonging, the inclusion was one of the most important pieces here. So that how can we replicate that moving forward? These experiences should not be ability dependent. And so we were focused on the accessibility piece of this. The second case study of that paper was done by my colleague Trevor Collins in the UK, where he took students with physical disabilities into the field, but then integrated technology so that there was this cross collaboration where students and researchers could communicate through tech in the field. What he did was he created a wireless network in the middle of nowhere where there were no internet connections, but he created an internet connection or an internet bubble where they could communicate in real time across the field site. It wasn't something that would then connect to the broader internet network, but they were connected within their field site. The third case study here actually took pieces from both the first and the second cases and integrated them into a project that we did in northern Arizona and Western Ireland, where we again took students with disabilities into the field and integrated all the outcomes that we found to get students involved in communicating across a wireless bubble. But the idea was not just about being in the field, but actually conducting the research that field scientists would. So giving the students all the tools necessary, showing them that it's possible that regardless of ability, that they can do this work. The third case study example at the bottom there was a more of a detailed look into that last case from the previous paper, where we looked at a critical incident analysis of the inclusive fieldwork and students as co-researchers. So this was the Northern Arizona and Western Ireland project where students were in the field, and what specifically we learned and the perspectives that we gained as researchers from the students and the work that they did to assist us along the way. So we were creating projects in collaboration with the students. Some of this we had no idea specifically what we were going to do, but when we got there into the field or leading up to the field sites, the students were heavily involved in identifying the research projects that we did. So that shows that importance of giving them the power of being able to make decisions and have a role to play in the research process. Carrie, next slide. So specifically, I was talking about the research experiences for undergrads or the REUs. And I'll talk about the Belize REU at the end, but this is the page for the NSF REU program. If you're not familiar with the REUs, this page is a wealth of information. You've got information. If you're working with undergraduate students, please make sure your students are aware of this. There's information on this site for students. And there's also, if you see down in the bottom right-hand corner, there is a directory of REU sites. And it's a directory of sites. You can filter it by content, topic, area, location, specifically what they're going to be doing. And now keep in mind that the examples that Carrie and I have shared with you so far are field intensive. REUs aren't all this way. They could be laboratory, they could be industrial site, or some other type of research experience for students. So make sure that if you have students that are interested in getting experience like this, have them take a look at the REU program. These are all funded projects. So if you have a course-based research experience that you currently have, or you're interested in creating a course-based experience, why not check out the NSF REU funding opportunities to turn that into something even broader and open that up to students outside of your institution? NSF is incredibly interested in creating more opportunities for undergrads to get involved in research. So if you look at the website in the middle of the bottom, you'll see information for faculty. Please do check that out. That is a wealth of information for you to get involved. And again, if you're really interested in this and you want to talk through this, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk to you. The second resource down there is the REU handbook that was specifically written for the GEO REU programs. So all REUs that are offered in the geosciences, this was a handbook specifically for them. But I'll tell you, this is a handbook of information that goes much broader than just the geosciences. So I would encourage you to check out this GEO REU handbook. You can just do a quick search. I know these slides will be available to you, so you have the links, but you can just do a quick search for GEO REU handbook and you'll come up with a guide. It's really a book of chapters on a whole bunch of different topics. So have a look at that. And then I give you a link to the Citizen Science GIS REU program. This is the Belize program that we started back in 2012 that has now grown much, much bigger than what we ever anticipated. Tim is doing a fantastic job in Belize, and I think he's actually expanding this to a lot more sites than just Belize. But on this website, it gives you a really good idea of what all is involved, how students are engaged in research, and might give you some ideas of what you might want to do in a similar situation. Next slide, please. So quickly, I want to shift to looking at community college or bridge programs from community colleges into four-year institutions. This is an incredible pool of talent, of potential talent, especially if you are in an area that there might be a community college nearby, that you can start recruiting students into your four-year programs by engaging with them at the community college level. The first resource here that I provide to you is the Community College Undergraduate Research Initiative. The link there is provided there, but it is a consortium of 44 institutions that provides resources to institutions that are putting on workshops or conferences, building regional national collaborations. It offers funding for startup supplies, a wide variety of faculty development opportunities. So this initiative is essentially looking at the curriculum for undergraduate research experiences, the course-based research experiences, and it's integrating case studies into introductory level courses. So you have a student that might be taking introductory biology, very first class that they ever take, and they're working on a specific case study as part of their introductory content. And a part of that case study is that them doing hands-on science. And the research experience within that might be a question that they as a group will come up with that's related to the case study. So it's a really interesting opportunity to get brand new students integrated into thinking about research. So do check that out. The next resource below, the STEM program at the National Science Foundation, is another great way to identify funding to support scholarships and for academically talented and low-income STEM majors, getting them involved in different programs, activities, research experiences, and it supports their recruitment, retention, and ultimately their graduation. This is one of the many opportunities for you to find funding to support your students, especially, again, that equity and inclusion, that belonging piece, making sure that we are pulling from the diverse talent pool nationally to get our students involved. And then finally, this was something that Carrie had mentioned that I wasn't thinking about. I've been aware of the NOISE program for years and years and years, but I didn't think of it the way, and I'll have Carrie explain it in detail, but I didn't think of it as a way to get pre-service teachers engaged in research experiences. So the NOISE program supports pre-service teachers and keeping them engaged and then putting them into careers. But I had never thought about actually getting these pre-service teachers involved in research experiences as a result of that process. So, Carrie, you want to tell us more about that?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, so when I had two NOISE awards when I was in the faculty, and the first one when I was at the Liberal Arts College, because of my disciplinary overlap in biology and STEM education, when I wrote my NOISE grant, it was about recruiting pre-service teachers into research experiences so that their content knowledge, that the two objectives were to increase their content knowledge of science and the scientific process, and then also for them to be able to translate that into curriculum for their own classrooms. And so most of the students in my NOISE program were pre-service teachers for grades 6 through 12. And so they were involved in research projects that they could then adapt to their own classroom, insect collecting projects, whatever it might be. And I think over the years, I think I had up to 12, I think I had 12 students involved in this, and it was really great for them. And then my STEM project was a partnership with a community college, a local community college when I was at my R1 institution. And it was all about, we had a seminar series and then a research experience for the community college students while they were still in their first 2 years, that during the summer they could come to the university and be involved in the laboratory and in the research projects there. So yeah, both of these models work really well for getting undergraduates involved in research.
I will say too that the STEM program is active, and I believe that they have funding a proposal due date of sometime in March of next year, 2027. The NOISE is currently inactive. They're waiting on a new publication. So keep an eye on NOISE if that is something that you are interested in. Every place has teacher education programs for the most part. So this is another great opportunity for you to engage with undergraduate students in diverse ways. Next slide, Carrie, please. So broadening participation. Again, this is something that all three of us have talked about so far today. How do we get a broader population of students engaged in the research that we do? How do we create that inclusion, that accessibility? How do we focus on belonging? So looking at our broadening participation and broader impacts, and for those of you who might be writing NSF proposals right now, you need to think about the broader impacts, and this is a great way to do that. So focusing on broadening participation allows diverse participation, dismantles the misconception that scientific careers are only for people from certain demographics. It restructures the intellectualism and the innovation of scientific disciplines. So looking at problem solving, how are we bringing together people from different backgrounds, different perspectives, experiences, different ability types, different cultures? How do we bring those folks together to look at an existing problem? Think problem-based learning, project-based learning from those different perspectives. The more people you bring together from a homogeneous population, the more you're going to get a lot of the same. Bringing people from diverse populations really expands the thinking, and the constructivism of everybody involved, construction of learning. It obviously will strengthen national competitiveness. We're bringing in people from all walks of life in the United States, helps address the growing demand for talent in research, tech, healthcare, and industry. Like I've said before, there's a wide talent pool in this country that a lot of times just needs an opportunity to get involved. And we need to make sure that we're providing those opportunities for students who are not typically engaged in STEM. It overall improves impact and ensures the discoveries, technologies, and policies are better address the needs of all communities and not just the communities from those students who might be involved in the research experiences. So again, broadens those opportunities, broadens the outcomes of the work. And then, like we've all said, promotes equity, reduces the barriers to participation in STEM, allowing individuals to continue to benefit from scientific advancement. Getting more people involved in the research and STEM careers, it only strengthens the national STEM enterprise. Gary?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So a couple things we wanted to point out when considering how to broaden participation in the activities that you do. A couple of these are soapboxes I will stand on for the rest of my life. I don't believe in uncompensated work. And so one of the best practices out there in the literature for involving undergraduates is to make sure that you're paying them for their work. The stipends and the paid research positions are absolutely critical. Oftentimes with the people that we're trying to bring into the STEM enterprise, they have to make a choice between research participation or part-time employment or anything else that might be going on in their lives. And so making sure that they're adequately compensated so that their lives are not negatively impacted by having to make that choice is absolutely critical. And so when you engage in some of these funding opportunities that we're talking about, that allows those funding opportunities have in them the budget structure for the stipends, for the hourly pay, or for just a omnibus payments of however much for a research period. I know it's changed a lot over the years, but when I had students in the field in the summertime for a 10 to 12 week period, some of the grant opportunities would allow for up to $4,000 to $5,000 plus covering their expenses. So it was very much something that ensured they could participate and not have to worry about the financial burden. Early recruitment. Now, this is in the literature as a best practice. Get them involved early. First year, sophomore, absolutely, because then they can continue in a research experience throughout their undergraduate years. And it works so well. It exposes them to research before some of those assumptions come up. And it invites the research students to act as ambassadors and as in introductory courses as they go through. And then oftentimes, because the research does take time, by the time they're in their junior or senior year, that's when the publications can start. And so they're seeing that scientific process through all the way to the end. Now, that's not to say you can't have junior seniors involved if they haven't had an opportunity before. And that's where the course-based model works really well, or the study abroad research experiences work really well. If you can't give them 3 to 4 years of experience, at least you have a snapshot where you can get them engaged. Targeted identity affirming programs for HBCUs, for HSIs, for tribal colleges and university students, for women, for veterans, for first generation college students. All of these are ways to ensure that they're belonging and in reducing their attrition for people who are excluded from STEM. We have this tagline in STEM education about those who have been quote historically excluded from STEM, and we've talked about this before, but It's still happening. People from these identities still are excluded from STEM. And so these identity affirming programs, even though the language we use in grant writing has to change right now, it still works to reduce attrition. It's just best practice for all students involved to get them a sense of belonging and to reduce their attrition from their STEM majors. So think about the ways, and if you want to talk about this topic with us one-on-one, you can feel free to talk with any of us about this. But it is absolutely critical to broadening participation in the STEM fields. And then also those industry and government collaborations. Number one, it's a great source of funding, and it gets the students funded, it gets your research funded, but it also expands the type of research available and introduces non-academic career pathways. So for example, I had tribal college students, and I was partnering with a bunch of the tribes here in Oklahoma and my own tribe. And I saw many of the students then, after their undergraduate years, take jobs with the tribal environmental services. I worked with oil and natural gas because contrary to the public discourse, oil and natural gas do have environmental offices that are concerned with how the impact on the land and on climate change. And so students who with a ecology or biology background or a teaching background going to work for the oil and natural gas industry actually works to collaborate the environmental sovereignty and the environmental concern with the knowledge that the students build through their ecological programs. So those partnerships are very important. And also recognizing the students' pathways won't always be academic. They're going to go into other paths, and we want to help support them. And research experiences are often a great way to do that through partnering with industry. And speaking of which, we want to talk a little bit, Yulia, about showcasing and recognizing students.
Thanks, Carrie and Chris. Excuse me. Yes, talking about soapboxes, this is mine. This slide gets at one of, I believe, one of the most under-leveraged parts of an undergraduate research program. What happens with the work after a student has finished it? So for us, working as a STEM or like working STEM scientists, publications are the deliverable of our research. This is a completed research. And the conference presentations are how we introduce our research, how we build visibility in our field, and build our professional network. These are really substantial parts of the job, not afterthoughts. But when undergraduates do the very same thing, we tend to frame it differently. The default treats showcasing of undergraduate research as sort of like an endpoint. Student does the work, presents the poster, gets the handshake, done. So it's a recognition as a reward for completion. And this is true, but it's only half of the story. The other half is that this visibility is doing a tremendous forward-facing work. A poster in a science building hallway can be profiled in a local campus newspaper, a name in the professional conference program. All those things, they're seen by people, by kids who haven't done research yet. So it can be freshman or sophomore deciding whether to email a professor. Can be a transfer student sizing up institution, whether they want to come here. It can be parents at the admissions event, right? So even faculty in other departments thinking, oh, I don't know whether should I not try the cure in my own course. So basically, showcasing teaches the rest of the community what's possible and who gets to do it. So this is how sort of like I want to come away from this slide or leave this slide with this reframing recognition that showcasing is not a capstone. It's a recruiting tool for next year's students, for a next year cohort. Where does it actually happen? For most students, the primary career building venue is disciplinary professional meetings. ACS for chemistry, HU for geosciences, ASM for microbiology, and so on and so forth. This is where students meet active researchers in the field, get feedback from people who will eventually review their manuscripts and graduate school applications, and they start building a network. Most of these societies, professional societies, run dedicated undergraduate sessions and offer student travel awards. So definitely worth asking about them in your discipline. For years, I've been serving on an undergraduate poster and talk panel for Lunar and Planetary Conference in Houston. It's a yearly conference in Houston. And the students were not separated in a different session from professional or from established scientists. They were scattered through. So we had a list. Our panel had a list of every single first presenter undergraduate that is at this conference, and we would attend every single talk, and we would stop by, ask questions at every single poster. So we would make sure that there is engagement and visibility, even on this small scale. But then also there was a reward, because I would have a competition comparison of the works, and top places would have cash prizes. Which is, I think, pretty awesome. And the program is still going at LPC. So next one is diversity-focused national meetings. Actually, it's third one, but I'll start there. Such as SACNAS and other like big name abbreviations. I'm going to talk just a little bit about that. But these three are actually really big. SACNAS is a Society for Advancement of Chicanos and Native Americans in Science. And I'm talking about this specifically from meetings or presentation venue standpoint. It's a huge meeting presenting cutting edge research and student poster sessions across all disciplines. It's not separated like professional societies. It's for all disciplines. This year, a meeting is in October in Long Beach, California. And early bird registration just started a few days ago. I think it's May 5th. So it's still time to do that. ABRCMMS and ARSES are another two major national organizations and conferences that, just like SACNAS, are dedicated to increasing diversity and specifically representation in STEM. The first one is, let me get it, it's an annual biomedical research conference for minoritized scientists. It's one of the largest professional conferences for underrepresented students in biomedical behavioral sciences. And the second one is American Indian Science and Engineering Society. So it's a national nonprofit focused on increasing the representation of indigenous peoples of North America and Pacific in STEM, again, specifically. So all three offers some of the best package travel scholarships in the country, including lodging and flight, not just conference registrations. So it makes them among the most accessible national venues for students who couldn't otherwise afford to travel to conference. Finally, publications. Yes, professional journals in your discipline. Of course, just like professional meetings, this is probably the first and foremost the go-to for students to get visibility and build their network. But there are also undergraduate research journals like SPUR, which is a scholarship and practice for undergraduate research. Don't mix it with UCLA's summer program for undergraduate research, the same acronym. But SPUR, actually a quarterly publication by Cure, definitely worth looking into. International Journal of Undergraduate Research and Creative Activities, this IJURCA. That all this kind of venues are giving, or publication venues give students authentic publication experience and a citable line in their CV. Meanwhile, your institutional newspaper, your local press coverage, annual research reports, those do the cultural work. They're tailing the campus and the surrounding community that this place where it takes place is where undergraduates do real research. So takeaway from this slide, I hope that you're going to take this away with you, is that don't treat symposia and press as nice to have. You'll add once your program matures. They are load-bearing infrastructure, and this is an infrastructure for actually building the program in the first place. The next one, please, Carrie. Okay, so this is a busy slide. I am not going through all the details. This is a reference for you to take. I put together about 24 funding programs across NSF, NIH, NASA, DOE, Department of Education, and some major foundations, professional organizations. Save the deck, share it with your colleagues, send it to the dean if you want to make a case for institutional support. But I do want to sort of emphasize two things before we close. And Carrie and Chris, please jump in and add to that. So first is engaging undergraduates and all the strategies, none of this work without people in the room. So undergraduate research is a high impact practice. Yes, but it's not really all about grants or the programs. It's about a faculty member who decides a sophomore or a freshman is worth investing in. Funding is incredibly important, and Carrie was talking about how important it is to compensate our students for work that they're doing. The funding does help you to scale your research or as the research group, but this choice happens before the funding does. And the second one is there's no right way to start. Carrie and Chris talked today about CURE and its curriculum and faculty-led mentored projects, formal programs like REU, community college-specific pathways. I talked about showcasing and recognition as apparatus that grows the next cohort. But you don't need all of it on day one. Just pick the lever that fits your specific institution, your students, your own bandwidth, and start there. Thank you so much for being here today. Carrie, Chris, would you like to add something?
Sure, just everybody, thanks for attending. We hope that this presentation, for those of you who are maybe new to your institutions and are wondering how to get started building your research program, especially if you have a high teaching load, hopefully this has given you some ideas. And we're happy to have one-on-one conversations with you during office hours. Here are our email addresses. On our Heroes webpage through this QR code, you can connect to any of us. So if you see somebody in the Heroes program who aligns with your discipline or whatever it may be, please do reach out. All of us are happy to talk about this with you. Also, stay in touch with our QEM events page. More webinars are coming up this summer that we're going to see some different workshops and opportunities for you to engage with us. And then also don't forget our feedback form. We'd love to hear from you. What else do you want to hear from us? How can we help you? And please do feel free to reach out. And I think we'll take questions if we have a couple minutes left, so we'll take questions if possible.
And we have one comment in the chat. Could you share the PowerPoint with us? And just as a reminder, the PowerPoints will be available in the QEM Resource Hub following this presentation, and you will receive an email directing you to the Resource Hub and inviting you to participate as a QEM network member. So look out for that email and you will have access to both the recording and the PowerPoint for this presentation. For questions, we have the Q&A box open, we have the chat open, and if you raise your hand, you can come off mute to ask a question.
Julia, do you have a question?
I do actually, Carrie. I'm just fascinated by those crickets. Uh, so the telemetry was was there actually excuse me, a sensor on a cricket?
Yes. So,
Okay, so walk me through through the
yeah,
process
yeah, yeah,
of
yeah.
attaching those sensors.
Yeah. So if you see up in this top picture here on the back, it's called the pronotum. There's a shield, like a shield piece of the exoskeleton that is quite hard and rigid on their back. And so these animals are big enough that this sensor here, it's a radio signal that it sends out. They actually weigh about a gram, and we could glue them onto the pronotum, the carapace of the animal, and it would stay there for about a week or so before falling off, and then we'd have to send the students out to track down where the sensors fell off. And so yeah, we put them in this particular project, we put them just on the males because we were curious about how they were courting females. And so yeah, that was fun. It was a lot of fun.
How much the cricket weighs?
Oh
Certified.
gosh, the females can be up to about 100 grams.
Oh, okay. So there's
So they're big, yeah. And
negligible. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And the males in this particular species, the males run about 50 to 65 grams, I think it was. So yeah, females are quite a bit larger. And the males are much faster too. It was hard to catch them initially to actually pin them down and put their radio transmitters on.
Cage them, glue the transmitters.
That's right.
Mm.
It'd be fascinating to reach out to your students now to see what all they remember and what they're even doing today.
Oh yeah, I know several were medical bound of some sort.
Yeah.
Coming from a small liberal arts school, several went to medical school, several went to physical therapy school, things like that. But there were several, and I think on my next slide here, there's a couple students in this picture that went on to be scientists. I think, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, actually 6, 7, 8 of them became scientists in one field or another. So yeah, it's
Nice.
pretty cool.
That's great.
Yeah.
So where would either of you start? So if you're a new faculty member and not really sure what to do next, where would you start? Because Yulia, you said it first, don't try to do it all. Just pick something and start there. But where would the two of you start?
I think I started with the New Zealand program because it was an extension of my PhD work. And I received some internal funding from the college to get it off the ground the first time. And then from then it was funded through various things. So that's where I started because I had them for 4 weeks. I had to figure out what to do with these students for 4 weeks. And I developed it as the cure. And that was part of the work I did too. I was familiar with the cure model. And then from there, because I had shown that I was able to do research with undergraduates, I got more grants and then was able to expand into other things. And I got a little bit of startup funding at my first institution. And so I was able to build my laboratory. And then the student funding and so forth just came from grants from there. So it built over time. It took time. It did take time.
Yeah. What about you, Yulia? Where would you start?
Well, as a new faculty, as a young new faculty, overwhelmed with teaching load, curriculum based.
Yeah. Funding might not be available right away for new faculty, and even an NSF proposal takes time to get funded. So integrating that into your coursework is probably a seamless way. So.
And there's lots of literature on that. So if anyone's wondering how cures are structured and how to work them, there's tons of literature on cures. So
yeah. Great. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for attending today. We hope to see you at a future QEM webinar. And thank you so much to our presenters for a very informative and lively discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.